What's up, you guys? I'm Dan. This is Frugal Not Cheap, and today we'll talk about looking rich or being wealthy. So you guys might have seen this meme over here, which shows basically a poor person that's spent a whole lot of money in order to flex and kind of look like they're doing really, really well. And then we've got a rich guy over here that spent, very little money on his clothes, but is financially secure. I think it says a couple of things. It says, one, that it doesn't really matter so much what the appearance is, so much as what the reality is. And then the other kind of subtext is that if we spend all of our money on trying to keep up appearances, then we don't have any money left over to invest. So these two are certainly good points and really kind of a lot of the theme of what I want to talk about in today's video. But I also want to set up a couple of definitions. So I'd like to try to differentiate being rich, which is an income thing, with being wealthy, which is a net worth thing. And I know a lot of times we kind of conflate these things and we think about them being the same thing, that, rich people, people that have a high income, we automatically assume that they must also be very wealthy, but it's actually not the case. And so we'll dig into the data. So a rich person would be someone with a high income, and then a wealthy person would be someone with a high net worth. And where I first really started thinking about how these two things don't always go together, it's because of the book that's on my shelf there, which is The Millionaire Next Door. There's a lot of people out there that look like they're rich, but they may not be wealthy at all. In fact, one of the funny ones is, if you remember MTV Cribs, turned out that some of those people, I think Little Bow Wow in particular, I'm not sure, but had rented the cars, the Ferraris and Lambos and stuff, to try to look like they were doing really well, but they didn't actually own those assets. There's even an acronym for people that have a high income but a low net worth, and that's a Henry, a high earner, not rich yet. And of course, they're not going to get rich if they continue to spend all of their income. So let's take a look at some numbers here so we can get an idea of what the landscape looks like here in the United States. Here's some data from 2021 that show you basically buckets of 20% of how people are doing. So we've got the lowest 20%, the highest 20%, and then the three in the middle. These are called quintiles. So the lowest income quintile had a mean of just about $15,000, where the highest quintile, so more like these Henry households, or potentially, whether or not they're saving, had incomes of about $270,000. The middle quintile, so sort of the more representative household right in the middle, had an income of around $71,000, so that's pretty healthy for the household. However, when we look at the same thing for net worth, we can see that sort of the ratio between the earnings and the savings or the income to net worth is really not all that great. So for the bottom 20%, this should be no surprise. When you're at a subsistence wage, it's going to be very difficult in order to save a whole lot. And for this quintile, we have a median net worth of around $6,000. For the top 20%, sort of the wealthy quintile, we've got a mean of $610,000. But again, if we look at the ratio of income to net worth, we had income at around 270K against a net worth of 610,000. And so that's not really that high of a multiple. We haven't really saved that many years of our income, or translated that many years of our income into net worth. Looking at the middle class, here we have a median net worth of just a little over $100,000. But again, with an income of around 70K as the median, then the ratio is less than 1.5 times our income as the median net worth. So you can see we're just not really good at turning income into assets. So again, what's going on here is, of course, for the lower quintiles of income, it's much, much harder to save and invest. But as we get higher up, unfortunately, there's a lot of lifestyle inflation. And so people just go ahead and spend whatever they're making. And so it's really actually pretty surprising. There's a good scene in the movie Margin Call where the guy is talking about how much he made and how quickly he's able to spend all of that.
Did you really make $2.5 million last year?
Sure. You learn to spend what's in your pocket.
$2.5 million goes quickly?
All right, let's see. So the tax man takes half up front, so you're left with 1.25. My mortgage takes another 300 grand. I send 150 home for my parents, keep them going. So what's that?
800.
All right, 800. Spent 150 on a car, about 75 on restaurants, probably 50 on clothes. I put 400 away for a rainy day.
That's smart.
Yeah, as it turns out, because it looks like the storm's coming.
And what I wanted to do is to find if there are any statistics out there, because here we're just looking at sort of these two different angles to look at the American financial status, but we're not really able to see the interplay between the two things. So what I wanted to see was, what is the net worth by lifetime earnings up to a certain age? So like by 60 or 65 or something like that, to see, all right, if you earned this much over that period, then what kind of a net worth do you have, right? I couldn't find any data like that. If you know of any that's out there, please let me know in the comments, that'd be great. But I did at least find some numbers from Thomas Stanley about the group that he studied for his Millionaire Next Door book. And so he found that the typical millionaire next door has an income that's only about 8% of their net worth. I think the average was actually just 7%. So that means if we use the average, then someone that's the typical millionaire amongst this study that had just $1 million, just I say, but you know what I mean, the lower end of the millionaires, they would have had an income of around 70K. And so we can see that these people are what he called prodigious accumulators of wealth. In other words, they're able to live well below their means, and thereby save and invest a lot, and thereby increase their net worth. And going back to our meme from the very beginning, these millionaires were just not flashy. In fact, Thomas Stanley has a quote from the vice president of a trust company. He'd done a focus group and a dinner with 10 first-generation millionaires, and here's what he had to say about them. These people cannot be millionaires. They don't look like millionaires. They don't dress like millionaires. They don't eat like millionaires. They don't act like millionaires. They don't even have millionaire names. Where are the millionaires who look like millionaires? And so that's probably a pretty wide-held view among the public, is that the people that have multi-million-dollar net worths are people that are the people that look really, really flashy out there, and that's based on Thomas Stanley's work, definitely not the case. In fact, Stanley goes on to say that this particular trust officer who said that actually was a hell of a lot more flashy than the first generation millionaires that were part of the group. He had a more expensive watch, more expensive suits, more expensive car, etc., etc. Stanley put the median income actually for these millionaire households at about $130,000, and said that the average income, which of course gets skewed by the top, is about $250,000. 95% of the millionaires in America have a net worth of between $1 and $10 million, so very few are going to be beyond that, and the ones that we usually think of when we think of sort of the glittering rich. And this group of millionaires comprises around a little bit less than 9% of Americans. So the moral of the story, I think, here is just, again, the truth matters more than appearances, and it can be very expensive to try to spend in order to keep up these appearances. And in fact, they're going to end up doing exactly the opposite of what we want, is that they're going to have us waste our money and not build up any assets. And if our income's below the $250,000 average amongst these millionaires that Stanley was talking about, and even below the $130,000 median, which is more representative of the group actually, I do have an older video where I went through the case for building up a $1 million net worth with an income of less than $100,000 a year. For a deeper dive, definitely recommend the Millionaire Next Door book. It's really entertaining, and there have been some updates over the years in order to get more current figures in it as well. Anyway, I hope you liked today's video. If you did, please hit the like button and consider subscribing. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.